I confronted my unfaithful wife who proposed an open marriage, and my payback was a divorce she never anticipated. David and Colleen, the golden couple everyone admired, first crossed paths at a wild college gathering. Amidst the pounding music and cheerful chatter, their eyes met, and from that moment, their connection was instant and deep, a love story worthy of poetry. Over time, their relationship grew into a stronghold, seemingly impervious to life's relentless challenges. But even the most robust structures can collapse. What once was a blazing inferno of passion had dwindled to a faint ember. The endless demands of daily life, coupled with the monotony of routine, slowly eroded their marriage's foundation. Colleen, feeling restless and yearning for the excitement that used to come so naturally, became entangled in the allure of a younger man. It was a risky endeavor, but she found herself unable to resist. David, sitting in the living room and lost in thought, replayed memories of their early days, laughter like a sweet melody and dreams that soared high. Those cherished moments now felt like remnants of another lifetime. He watched as Colleen, impeccably dressed, prepared for yet another night out. Her appearance was dazzling, a stark contrast to their increasingly indifferent interactions at home. "Don't give me that look," Colleen said, slipping on her heels. "Women in their 40s often crave younger companionship." Leaning back in his chair, David swirled his drink with a wry grin. "And often end up divorced," he replied coolly. Colleen's eyes glinted with a mix of defiance and confidence. "You wouldn't divorce me," she declared firmly. "You love me, and I love you. This is just a phase. You wouldn't throw away everything we've built over something so trivial." David's laughter cut through the air, sharp and biting. "Oh, how progressive of you," he said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "You're right, it's practically trendy now. Even Joan Bennett, Mrs. Perfect herself, has a lover. Isn't it charming how everyone pretends their marriages are fine while sneaking around?" Colleen's expression hardened, but she held her tongue. The silence between them was thick with unspoken truths. David took a deliberate sip of his drink, his eyes locked on hers. "Go ahead, Colleen. Have your night out. Just remember, every choice comes with a price." When the doorbell rang, Colleen glanced at David. "Can you get that?" she asked, already knowing his response. Without looking up, David answered flatly, "Nope. I'm not welcoming your boyfriend." With a resigned sigh, Colleen opened the door to find Ryan, her younger companion, waiting patiently on the porch. "Sorry about that," she said, gesturing toward the living room where David sat, unmoving. "He's struggling with the situation." Ryan gave her a reassuring smile, his calm demeanor one of the traits that had drawn her to him. Back inside, Colleen tried to placate David. "Ryan's not my boyfriend," she said, planting herself in front of him. "Not yet. And let's not forget, I've been loyal and supportive for 20 years. I deserve a little freedom." David glared at her, his tone cold. "Freedom to do what? Date a guy you met at Starbucks?" Colleen nodded without shame. She had indeed met Ryan at the Starbucks near her office, where his playful banter made her feel invigorated. All her friends were having flings with younger men, so why not her? That evening, Ryan arrived in a sleek, expensive Mercedes, tipping the valet effortlessly and exuding confidence. "I'm glad you agreed to join me tonight, Colleen. You're stunning," he said as he led her into the restaurant. Colleen accepted the compliment with a smile, but felt compelled to clarify. "Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate your attention. But I love my husband. I'm not leaving him." Ryan, undeterred, nodded. "I only wanted to share an evening with a beautiful, intelligent woman," he replied. The night flowed smoothly, their earlier coffee chats providing a foundation for their connection. After dinner, they visited a jazz club, where Ryan grew bolder, resting his hand on her thigh. Colleen found the touch exhilarating. Around midnight, as they left the club, they shared a passionate kiss in his car. Colleen pulled away, breathless but resolute. "I should go home," she said. Ryan's eyes sparkled. "When can I see you again?" They arranged to meet for lunch on Sunday, followed by a ballet performance. Ryan's cousin had secured them excellent seats. As Colleen returned home, she found David already in bed. In the bathroom, she wiped away her makeup and debated whether to wake him. "David," she called softly. He stirred, barely awake. "Do you want to talk?" she asked. "No," he muttered. "I want to sleep." The next day, Colleen wasn't surprised that David had left early. She visited his office later, hoping to reconcile. "I wanted to spend time with you," she said. David's reply was bitter. "Boyfriend busy today?" Their conversation devolved into an argument about her actions and their impact on their marriage. David accused her of selfishness, while Colleen defended her choices, insisting they wouldn't affect her love for him. Sunday arrived, and David worked late into the night. Colleen, torn between her affection for David and her excitement about Ryan, prepared for her date. She kissed Ryan goodbye that evening, still hoping David would come to terms with her choices. Back at home, she tried to rekindle intimacy with David. Despite his lingering resentment, they spent the night together. Yet by morning, the divide between them remained. Colleen left to meet Ryan, unsure if David would ever truly accept her new reality. Seeing their Mustang missing from the driveway, Colleen realized David had left. She sighed, climbed into her car, and headed out to meet Ryan, unaware of the sedan discreetly trailing her. When she arrived, Ryan was already waiting, reassuring her that it was no issue she was running late. They were quickly seated at the restaurant, and Colleen found herself fully immersed in the moment, temporarily forgetting about David in Ryan's engaging presence. Their conversation flowed effortlessly over an excellent meal, and Colleen briefly considered suggesting David try the restaurant with her sometime. The ballet performance was stunning, and Colleen was captivated not only by the artistry, but also by Ryan's insights. He explained the narrative and significance of specific movements, revealing an expertise Colleen hadn't experienced with David. It wasn't a critique, merely an acknowledgement of the differences between the two men and how they complemented distinct aspects of her life. She even entertained the thought that Ryan might be more than just a passing fling. After the show, Ryan drove them to a scenic overlook in hill country, offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Colleen suspected she wasn't the first woman Ryan had brought there, but it didn't bother her. "You're absolutely stunning, Colleen. I'm fortunate to have you here with me," Ryan remarked. "Then I suppose we're both lucky, Ryan," she replied with a smile. They leaned into a heated kiss, her head spinning with desire. For a moment, Colleen wondered if she could hold off until the fifth date, as she'd originally planned. Reluctantly, she broke away, leaving Ryan visibly disappointed. "I'm sorry, Ryan. I want to, but I have certain boundaries," she explained. "I understand, Colleen," Ryan replied smoothly. "I get that you need to feel comfortable, but I'd think all our coffee meetups would count for something. You're right. We've gotten to know each other quite well before this first official date. Maybe I'm being too strict," she admitted. "When can you spare a longer lunch?" Ryan asked. "Not Monday, but Tuesday works. I'll need time to freshen up before heading home, so keep that in mind," Colleen replied. "Don't worry. I'll bring everything needed and text you the details tomorrow morning at Starbucks," he assured her. Colleen agreed, and Ryan dropped her back at the restaurant parking lot. She returned home elated, her mind buzzing with excitement. She glanced at her phone, hoping for a message from David, but found none. After changing into loungewear, she began preparing dinner. When she heard the garage door open, she greeted David warmly as he entered. "Hi, honey. Did you have a nice drive?" she asked. "It was fine," he replied curtly. She leaned in to kiss him, but he turned his cheek, his mood still sour from her leaving that morning. Still, she found comfort in the fact that he was at least speaking to her. "Dinner will be ready in 15 minutes, Colleen informed him. "That's fine. I'll be in the office," David said, heading off. Colleen prepared a quick teriyaki stir-fry with rice and called him to the table once it was ready. David joined her but remained aloof. "Where did you drive to today?" she asked, attempting to make conversation. "Nowhere special. Just drove along the highway," he replied. "Did you stop anywhere?" she continued. "I grabbed lunch at a small deli off the freeway and stretched my legs a bit." "That's it," David said flatly. Colleen tried to share details about her day, including the ballet. "I'm not interested in hearing about your date, Colleen," David interrupted sharply. "It wasn't about that. I just wanted to—" "I said, not another word about it," David snapped, pushing back from the table with his meal half-eaten. He retreated to his office, leaving Colleen alone. She sat in silence before clearing the table and packing up the leftovers for David's lunch. The evening was spent tidying the house, hoping David might eventually emerge from his office. She yearned to salvage the day by sharing the beauty of the ballet with him, imagining it could be something they'd enjoy together someday, without Ryan in the picture. Later, Colleen prepared for bed, reading while waiting for David. Near midnight, she guessed he was deliberately staying away until she fell asleep. She went to his office. "Are you coming to bed?" she asked softly. "Eventually, I have things to finish," David replied coldly. "Please, David, come lay with me. We don't have to talk. Just be beside me," she pleaded. "I told you, Colleen, I have work to do. If that feels like avoidance, I can't help it. The sooner I finish, the sooner I can join you." "Excuse me," David said firmly. Disheartened, Colleen returned to bed, setting aside her book. She wondered if her guilt was clouding her perception of David's actions, but dismissed the thought, confident she wasn't doing anything wrong. She still loved David and believed he needed to accept her decisions. Turning off the light, she fell asleep quickly. The next morning, Colleen woke alone. David had left for work early again, and she grew increasingly frustrated with his unwillingness to adapt. Determined not to grovel, she resolved to continue seeing Ryan while maintaining her role as a devoted wife. She dressed and headed to Starbucks, spotting Ryan seated in their usual corner. "I couldn't stop thinking about you last night," Ryan said as she joined him. "Same here. I'm excited for tomorrow," Colleen replied. Ryan handed her a note. "Here's the plan for tomorrow. My condo is more private than a hotel," he suggested. "Thank you for being discreet, Ryan." "I don't want to hurt David any more than I already have," Colleen said. "Of course," Ryan replied. After a brief chat, he left for work, and Colleen joined her friends for their usual meetup. Although she knew they had lovers, she chose not to share her plans, fearing word might get back to David. That evening, David greeted her warmly, and they enjoyed a pleasant dinner. Colleen felt optimistic, thinking David was beginning to accept her dynamic with Ryan. She didn't realize he was quietly strategizing to discourage her affair. The next day, she met Ryan at his condo, feeling a surge of anticipation. Once inside, they embraced passionately and quickly became intimate. The experience was electric, unlike anything Colleen had felt in years. Afterward, as they lay together, Ryan teased, "Better than your husband." Colleen sat up sharply. "My husband is off limits. He's a wonderful lover, and this isn't a competition. If you make it one, we're done. Clear?" she said firmly. "Understood. I didn't mean to offend," Ryan replied. They spent the next few hours in affectionate conversation before Colleen showered, leaving her toiletries for future visits. She returned home, ensuring her appearance gave no hint of where she'd been. When David arrived, she greeted him warmly, but his demeanor shifted as they hugged. He pulled back, his expression dark. "You slept with him today, didn't you?" he accused. "What? Why would you think that?" Colleen asked, trying to stay composed. "You're a creature of habit. A midday shower isn't normal for you unless you're covering something up," David said bluntly, then walked past her into his office. Colleen cursed under her breath, realizing her oversight. She needed a better plan to keep David in the dark. For dinner, she prepared chicken linguine, but found herself eating alone. David refused to join her, claiming he wasn't hungry. As she cleaned up, Colleen resolved to continue seeing Ryan despite David's resistance. She believed he would eventually accept her choices and focus on their marriage. Colleen viewed it as a test of her determination. After some time, she checked on David and found him asleep. She returned to bed and slept soundly. The following day, David texted her to say he would be working late. She realized there wasn't much else she could do to help him process their new dynamic and knew what she needed to say the next time they spoke. By Thursday morning, Colleen was eagerly anticipating her meeting with Ryan. During their discussion at Starbucks the previous day, they had finalized their schedule. Mondays were out due to Ryan's commitments, and Colleen avoided Fridays and weekends to preserve her time with David. Tuesdays and Thursdays at Ryan's condo became their designated days. Her meeting with friends seemed to drag on endlessly, but when it was finally over, she hurried to her car, taking care to stay within the speed limit. At Ryan's condo, where the door was unlocked, he waited for her on the bed. They skipped any preliminary chatter and dove into another intense 3-hour session. Ryan's flexibility with his schedule allowed for these prolonged encounters. Though she would never admit it, Colleen found Ryan's experience with women made him a more skilled lover than David. Afterward, she checked her phone. Seeing no messages, she assumed David would arrive home at his usual time. She drove back, showered thoroughly, aware that this routine might alert David, and changed into her loungewear to await him. When David arrived just before 7 p.m., Colleen greeted him cheerfully. "Good evening, honey. Will you be having dinner with me tonight?" "I'm fine. I grabbed something on the way home," he replied curtly. "You know fast food isn't good for you," she chided gently. "Yeah, well, I'll be in the office," he said dismissively. "David, when you have a moment, I'd like to talk," she requested. "Okay," he said, heading to his office and shutting the door behind him. Colleen worked on her fundraiser, but eventually realized he wasn't going to initiate the conversation. She went to his office and knocked. "David, can we talk now?" she asked. "I suppose," he sighed. Colleen sat across from him. "Honey, I love you very much. I don't see my new relationship as affecting our marriage, but I know you feel differently. This is something I need and want. I hoped you'd be more understanding, but I'll be patient. I'm here every evening and weekend, hoping we can move past this. Even if you choose to ignore me, I'll still be here," she explained. "So you're going to keep seeing Ryan?" he asked. "Yes, she began, but he cut her off. "You didn't think I'd learn his name?" David interrupted. "I assumed you'd prefer not to know," she said. "Also, I'm sorry about the shower on Tuesday. From now on, I'll shower every weekday afternoon to keep things consistent. That way, you won't know when I've seen him." "And this is your final decision? There's nothing I can do to change your mind?" David asked, his tone tight. "I'm sorry, but no," she confirmed. "Well, I appreciate your honesty, even if it's not what I wanted to hear." "Is that all?" he asked, visibly hurt. "I love you, David. I hope you can separate my love for you from the physical need Ryan fulfills," she said softly. David gave her a wry smile and nodded. Seeing he had nothing more to say, she left quietly, shutting the door behind her. She had been nervous about the conversation, but felt proud of handling it well. Colleen believed David would eventually understand how much she valued their marriage, and that her relationship with Ryan didn't diminish it. That Friday evening and throughout the weekend, Colleen stayed home, leaving only for brief errands. She invited David to join her, hoping to ease his concerns, but he declined. While they spoke as needed without hostility, their interactions lacked affection. On Saturday night, Colleen tried to initiate intimacy, but David gently rebuffed her efforts. She remained hopeful, convinced that time would help him adjust. By Monday morning, David left early again. Colleen suspected this pattern would persist, but remained optimistic that things would eventually return to normal. The midday showers were inconvenient, but she saw them as a small price to pay to ease David's discomfort. During her regular meetup with friends, she listened to their tales of younger lovers, her thoughts drifting to Ryan and causing her to blush. "Colleen, are you all right? You're looking a little flushed," Gail asked with concern. "I'm fine, just feeling warm," Colleen replied, sipping her water and refocusing on the conversation. After another cold evening with David, Colleen prepared for her Tuesday with Ryan. When she arrived, Ryan greeted her at the door, in a robe that soon fell to the floor. They shared a passionate session, followed by a relaxed conversation. "How are things at home? Do you feel safe?" Ryan asked with genuine concern. "Thank you for asking, but David isn't like that. He's struggling to adjust and seems distant, though he denies avoiding me," Colleen explained. "So, you're still talking? That's a good sign," Ryan noted. "Yes, but only briefly and when necessary. I've assured him of my love and am trying to be there for him. It'll take time for him to see you're no threat to our marriage," she said. They spent another hour together before Colleen left. After a thorough shower, she read a book while waiting for David. When he arrived just after 7:30 p.m., Colleen greeted him warmly. "How was work, honey?" she asked. "It was fine," David replied curtly. "Would you like dinner tonight?" she offered. "I had a late lunch. I'm fine," he said. "Anything you'd like to talk about?" she inquired gently. "I'll be in the office," he said, closing the door behind him. Colleen sat alone again, determined to give him the space he seemed to need. Confident she was making the right choices, she returned to her book. Over the following weeks, Colleen continued her twice-weekly meetings with Ryan, enjoying their physical connection. Her evenings and weekends with David remained cordial but distant. She prepared dinner every night, but David consistently declined, retreating to his office. Despite the loneliness, Colleen believed she could balance her marriage and her relationship with Ryan. After 3 months, David's mood improved slightly. He began arriving home later but in better spirits. Occasionally, they shared meals or spent time watching TV together. However, their physical intimacy remained absent. After 6 months without making love, Colleen decided to address the matter directly. "David, I appreciate your understanding about Ryan. I know this hasn't been easy," she began. "Well, you didn't exactly give me much of a choice," David replied. "I know, and I'm sorry. But I miss our physical relationship. When do you think we might resume that part of our marriage?" she asked. "I've made my decision, Colleen. I'm not interested in having sex with you," David said bluntly. "David, that's absurd. I always make sure I'm very clean for you. There's no reason we can't be intimate," Colleen protested. "You made your choice and forced it on me." "I'm making mine," David retorted, leaving the room. Stunned, Colleen realized her assumptions about David had been wrong. She resolved to find another way to reach him, increasing her efforts to entice him. But after 2 months of trying, nothing changed. Their marriage felt more like a friendship. Though frustrated, Colleen resolved to accept the relationship as it was. One Wednesday morning, she decided to visit David's office unexpectedly, hoping to reignite their connection. Upon arriving, she was greeted by his longtime receptionist, Terry. "Mrs. Lynch, it's been a while since you stopped by," Terry said warmly. "Hello, Terry. Is David in his office?" Colleen asked as she walked toward it. "Yes, but please wait. They're working on confidential documents, so I need to announce you," Terry said, stepping forward. Terry picked up the phone and dialed David's extension. "Mr. Lynch, your wife is here to see you," Terry said. Colleen couldn't make out David's response, but the call ended quickly. "He'll be a couple of minutes, Mrs. Lynch. He needs to secure some documents," Terry informed her. Colleen nodded and took in her surroundings, noticing a mix of familiar and new faces in the office. She observed that Eileen's desk was empty and assumed she was likely in David's office. After a few minutes, David's door opened, and a strikingly attractive woman emerged. She was shorter than Colleen, with long, dark brown hair and a pronounced figure. The woman appeared to be in her late 20s or early 30s, and Colleen felt an immediate dislike toward her. "Mrs. Lynch, nice to meet you. I'm Alana," the woman said warmly. "Come on back," she added, guiding Colleen down the hallway she knew so well. Alana lingered at the doorway as Colleen entered David's office. "Thank you, Alana. Take your lunch break now. We'll continue later," David instructed. "Yes, sir," Alana responded, closing the door behind her as she left. Colleen couldn't resist a remark. "How does she manage not to tip over with those things?" she asked dryly. David sighed. "I assume you didn't come here to insult my assistant. What happened to Eileen?" he asked, steering the conversation elsewhere. "She got promoted," David replied. "To what position?" Colleen inquired. "Executive assistant. The role was becoming too demanding, and she needed a position with less responsibility and no travel. I created a new role for her," David explained. "So this girl will be traveling with you now?" Colleen asked sharply. "Yes," David said, his tone flat. "Your jealousy is both amusing and ironic, given the situation." "Why are you here?" "I came to take my husband to lunch," Colleen said firmly. "On a Wednesday?" David sounded surprised. "Yes, because I miss you. I wanted to spend time with you and show you that I love you," she explained. "Fine. They've opened a new Vietnamese place nearby. Let's go," David conceded. The walk to the restaurant was mostly silent, with a few casual comments about their surroundings. Colleen held David's arm, and he didn't pull away. They were seated quickly, and the hostess greeted David by name, indicating he was a regular. Their conversation was light, touching on trivial topics, and David recommended dishes for Colleen to try. She reached across the table to take his hand, and he didn't withdraw. "Do you believe that I love you, David?" Colleen asked softly. "Love me?" David said, his voice tinged with sarcasm. "My kind of love doesn't allow for what you've done. but yours does. At least you picked someone decent. What do you mean? How do you even know about Ryan? Colleen asked, startled. I had him investigated. I know you go to his condo every Tuesday and Thursday. I also noticed you made time for me today without skipping your time with him. At least he's not a con man or a gold digger, David said coolly. He's not like that, Colleen defended. Famous last words, but you're right. He seems to be in it just for the sex, David remarked dryly. David, let's change the subject. I came here to spend time with you and talk about us, Colleen pleaded. What us, Colleen? We're more like roommates than husband and wife. We haven't made love in nearly a year, David pointed out. Your choice, Colleen interjected. David smirked. Yes, my choice. You chose to cheat on me, so no sex. And our time together now is just sharing space or watching TV. That's why I'm here today. I'm not happy with this, and I want to change it. I have no intention of giving up Ryan, but I want our time to be meaningful, Colleen explained earnestly. That's what you don't understand, Colleen. As long as you're seeing Ryan, this is all it can be, David countered. I don't accept that, David. Our marriage can be the same. My time with Ryan doesn't impact my love for you. I don't love him. It's like spending time with a friend, Colleen argued. But it's not the same. Friends don't change the dynamic of a marriage. No one should revolve their life around one person. But I can't ignore what's happening. There were 2 people in our marriage. Now there are 3. Saying you don't love him and just use him for sex makes it worse. What does that make him? A toy? David's voice rose with frustration. By the time he finished, he was nearly shouting. Colleen tried to calm him, but her efforts were futile. David pulled out his wallet, placed a bill on the table, and walked out. Colleen gathered her things quickly, whispering apologies to the other diners and ignoring their disapproving looks. She saw David heading back toward his office, but knew she couldn't catch him, so she walked slowly to her car. Once inside, she broke down in tears, confused about why her arrangement with Ryan was impacting her marriage so deeply. Joan and the others had lovers and maintained happy marriages. Why couldn't she? She considered discussing it with her friends, but decided against it, not wanting them to see her as failing at something they managed so easily. Back home, she took her usual afternoon shower, deliberately avoiding any appearance of seeking comfort from Ryan. She dressed neatly and waited for David to return. Around 9 p.m., he texted to let her know he'd be late. She made herself dinner and occupied herself with light cleaning. When David finally walked in, she greeted him cautiously. David, can we talk, please? She asked. I don't know what else there is to say, Colleen. You've had an affair despite my objections. It's been nearly a year, and you think the issue is my reaction, not the affair itself. What's the point of talking again? David replied, his frustration evident. I believe we can be more than this, David. We've been together for so long. We can find a way to make this work, Colleen pleaded. David gave a dry laugh and motioned for her to sit. I spoke to your friends' husbands when this started, except Wendell. His infidelities are well known, and no one needed to ask about them. The others had interesting perspectives, he began. What do you mean? Did they give you advice? Colleen asked, hopeful. They did, and I've applied some of it, David replied, watching her carefully. Colleen felt blindsided. Like what? She asked. Only Rick and Gail kept having sex after Gail found a lover, David began, laying bare the details of her friends' marriages. Terry picked up the phone and called David's extension. Mr. Lynch, your wife is here to see you, Terry informed him. Colleen couldn't hear the reply, but the call ended quickly. He'll need a couple of minutes to secure some documents, Mrs. Lynch, Terry said. Colleen nodded and glanced around the office, noting a mix of familiar and new faces. She noticed Eileen's desk was empty and assumed she was inside David's office. Moments later, David's door opened and a striking young woman walked out. Shorter than Colleen, with long, dark brown hair and an ample figure, she appeared to be in her late 20s or early 30s. Colleen instantly disliked her. Mrs. Lynch, nice to meet you. I'm Alana, the woman said with a pleasant smile. Come on back, she added, guiding Colleen down the hallway she knew so well. Alana lingered at the doorway as Colleen entered David's office. Thank you, Alana. Take your lunch break now. We'll continue later, David instructed. Yes, sir, Alana replied before closing the door behind her. Colleen couldn't resist making a jab. How does she manage not to topple over with those? She quipped. David sighed. I assume you didn't come here to insult my assistant. What do you need? What happened to Eileen? Colleen asked, steering the conversation. She got promoted, David replied. To what? Colleen pressed. Executive assistant. The job was becoming too demanding for her, and she needed a role with less responsibility and no travel. I created a new position for her, David explained. So now this girl travels with you? Colleen asked sharply. Yes, and I find it amusing and ironic that you're jealous, considering everything, David said coolly. Why are you here? I came to take you to lunch, Colleen replied firmly. On a Wednesday? David asked, surprised. Yes, because I miss you and wanted to spend time with you. I wanted to show you that I still love you, she explained. Fine, there's a new Vietnamese restaurant nearby. Let's go, David said with a sigh. They walked in near silence, exchanging only a few casual remarks about their surroundings. Colleen held David's arm, and he didn't seem to mind. At the restaurant, they were seated quickly, and the hostess greeted David by name, signaling that he was a regular. Over the meal, they chatted lightly, with David recommending dishes for Colleen to try. When she reached across the table to take his hand, he didn't pull away. Do you believe I love you, David? Colleen asked softly. Love me, David said with a sardonic smile. My kind of love doesn't leave room for what you've done, but I suppose yours does. At least you picked someone decent. What do you mean? How do you even know about Ryan? Colleen asked, taken aback. I had him investigated, David said coolly. I know you go to his condo every Tuesday and Thursday. I also noticed you made time for me today without skipping your time with him. At least he's not a con artist or gold digger. He's not like that, Colleen said defensively. Famous last words. But you're right. He seems to be in it just for the sex, David retorted. David, let's not talk about this. I came here to spend time with you and discuss us, Colleen pleaded. What us, Colleen? We're more like roommates than a married couple. We haven't made love in nearly a year, David pointed out. That was your choice, Colleen said pointedly. David smirked. Yes, my choice. You decided to have an affair, and I made my own decisions. That's why we're here today. I'm not happy with how things are, and I want to change them. I have no intention of giving up Alana, but I want our time to mean something. That's what you don't understand, David. Our marriage can still work. My relationship with Ryan doesn't affect how I feel about you. I don't love him. It's like spending time with a friend, Colleen argued. It's not the same, David countered. Friends don't alter the dynamics of a marriage. You brought a third person into our relationship. Saying you don't love him and use him for sex doesn't help. It makes it worse. What does that make him? A toy? David's voice grew louder with each sentence, drawing stares from nearby tables. Frustrated, he took out his wallet, left cash on the table, and stormed out. Colleen quickly gathered her things, murmuring apologies to the other diners, and left. She caught a glimpse of David heading back to his office, but knew she couldn't catch up. Sitting in her car, she broke into tears. How had her life come to this? Her husband now had a mistress, one who was young, beautiful, and possibly Hispanic. She drove aimlessly, sending David periodic texts to let him know she was safe. His responses were brief but consistent. Please be safe. It gave her some comfort that he still cared. When Colleen finally returned home in the early hours of the morning, she found David asleep, but he had thoughtfully left her bedside lamp on. She changed and climbed into bed, where David stirred awake. Are you okay, Colleen? He asked, his voice filled with concern. Yes, David, I'm fine, but I'm exhausted. Let's get some sleep and talk tomorrow, she said. They never got around to talking, as David left early for work the next day, and Colleen decided not to cancel her meeting with Ryan. In the weeks that followed, Colleen adjusted to the knowledge of David's relationship with Alana. While she tried to accept it, the reality still stung. She felt unwell, spending more evenings in bed, her sensitive stomach a sign that her marriage troubles were taking a toll. Finally, she decided to see a doctor. One day, she marched into David's office unannounced. Despite Terry's attempt to stop her, Colleen entered and found Alana sitting on David's lap. Startled, Alana quickly bolted into the restroom. Colleen, what are you doing here? David asked, annoyed. We need to talk, she said firmly, ignoring his tone. Handing him a folder, she added, I'm divorcing you. David's shocked expression was almost amusing, though Colleen didn't feel like laughing. He skimmed the paperwork, finding the terms surprisingly fair. Why now? He asked. Because I love you, Colleen replied. I've hurt you too much, and this isn't fixable. I want you to be happy, with Alana and your child. David was stunned. What about you? I'm pregnant, Colleen revealed. It's Ryan's. David's jaw dropped, and the room fell silent. Both realized their marriage, long devoid of children, had come to an end as they embarked on separate journeys into parenthood.